Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. I'll refer Council and members of the general public to the Committee of the Whole agenda of Council for Monday, June 25th, 2012. First order of business there is the adoption of the agenda. It comes with a recommendation that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting of June 25th, 2012 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Thorkelson. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. The agenda is adopted. Under petitions and delegations, there is a presentation from Mrs. Danielle Dalton, the President, and Patrick Wickwicki, the Executive Director of the Association of Francophones, regarding the Sugar Shack Festival. I'd ask those representatives, if they're available this evening, to come forward. Good evening, Mrs. Dalton. Please make yourself comfortable up front here. And when you go to speak, if you'd press the grayish-green button, that'll allow people at home that are watching on television to hear you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council member, I'm supposed to start. Certainly, Lothar. Thank you. I needed that today. First, I'm supposed to extend Patrick regrets from not being here tonight, although if there is a God, he should walk in any minute. And the two reasons is because he wanted to be here to do the presentation. And second, he was very afraid that I would do the presentation. So he sent me a little email today reminding me not to deviate as to why I'm here. So I will just take his note if that's all right with you.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Yes, but we'll have to keep that for later, Your Honor.
Okay.
So of course, we're here for the Sugar Shack, and I need to recap that the 2012 festival was quite lovely. That was our second annual Sugar Shack, and it was very well attended. And we are quite pleased with the community supporting us in our endeavor. You will see that we've included a copy of our festival budget. What we are here expressly today is our plight regarding $406.75. What this is what it's a little bill that we have remaining at the Civic Center for the auditorium. And here is our plight as far as that. The story goes is originally when we moved into town, we approached City Council and told you about our association and that we wanted to do the Sugar Shack once a year. And basically what we were looking for was an in-kind donation. And we not really wanted to have money changing hand, just we need it for one day. Would you give it to us for one day? Council was very kind. We got it. Of course, the second year we've had a couple of little glitch happening. There was an election, and when it was time for us to come and ask for the auditorium, we were asked not to do anything until after the election. Then after the election, we were asked to not do that, but to please could we fill out the grant application, and we did. We weren't very sure about that, but hey, you know, we don't know any better, and we didn't want to be contrary, so we filled that up. Then we wanted to come in January, and we were told not to do that either, and the council would just take care of things. It was just temporary, be no problem, and to just go ahead and things would take care of themselves. And in point of fact, it certainly did, and thank you very much. We're very happy about that. Lo and behold, what happened after that is after the Sugar Shack, we got a bill for $906.75, but we got $500 from the city. What happened here is simply this. We had already done our papers for Heritage Canada, submitted our budget. We've had already, after the Sugar Shack, written our report to Heritage Canada. And second of all, we didn't have any more money. As you will look on our budget, you'll notice that we don't get a whole lot of money. I only have one employee. That employee works at least half the time just doing grant application. And because you all know how that works, it takes a long time for very little return. But in any event, we also operate on the kindness of our volunteers and in kind fashion. So basically, I have two goals here tonight. Is one, to be forgiven the $406.75. And I am not begging. I can do that. I'll throw that in the pot if that could help things. And the second is that because we're really having a great time in Prince Rupert, and we feel that we have got such fabulous partnership, is I'm just wondering if tonight we could ask the benevolence of the council and to see if we could deal on just in kind manner instead of just dealing in money. Because for us, it makes a big difference when we send reports to Heritage Canada. There's two things that they want to see. They want to see that we have the support of our community. That's number one. And also, Patrick had mentioned something about fundraising. Someone had mentioned about fundraising. And I need to bring the attention. We would love to do a lot of that, but I just have one staff member, and it takes a long time. This year we're going to have our second annual murder mystery. And I just want to let you know that although we made a little bit of money, $700 doesn't go a lot of way for us to be able to do a lot of things. And I'm sorry, Councillor Garon?
When you say support from the community, does that mean a grant that you're looking for that you have to?
We prefer to have.
Or does
No, we prefer to have the in-kind donation.
But when the application says community support, does that mean members of the community supporting your activity, or does it actually mean a grant or an in-kind donation from the city of Prince Rupert? Is that the criteria?
Yeah, that's absolutely it.
So your preference is for an in-kind donation?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Please conclude your presentation.
Well, in a nutshell, I think this is about it. I will put my glasses on just to make sure that Mr. Witwicky. Yes, I can see that I've followed pretty much what he wanted to have happen. And if he sees that in the TV, he's not going to...
He's seen it in person.
Beat me.
So,
Sorry.
Mrs. Dalton, good evening, Patrick. Mrs. Dalton, I'd ask you to just summarize your request to the council. Just the items.
Basically, we would love to be forgiven our $406.75 and put that in kind. And we would like to, for the next year, to just dealing with
have an in-kind donation
rather
than
just,
get a bill,
absolutely.
Get an invoice.
Absolutely.
So that's your request to the council?
That is a request. And usually our Sugar Shack always going to be the last Saturday of January. And with just being able to set up after 9 o'clock on the Friday before and putting in things in the kitchen. And so that is what the request.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if there's questions from members of council. Councillor Ashley.
So I'm just trying to clarify, as some of the stuff that you were saying, I guess, caught me off guard. So I was just, you said that people had told you about not that things to wait until after the election. I'm just reading my notes here, and that you were given the application before the election. Well, you did decide upon it after the election because that was something that previous council decided to do so that the new council could look at applications at that point. But I'm just wondering, like, who told you these things? Because I know that we get our applications, and we did get an application from you by the end of October. So it was in council's hands. Of course, we didn't go through all of the budget process at that time. So all of the community grants were on hold. So I'm just trying to clarify how the information was presented, so if there's a communication problem, that we can try and solve that.
Quite frankly, when this was happening, we didn't think that there was any bad communication or anything else like that. It was just how it was. It was just, we knew it was election. We had no problem with that. We were asked to do the grant application. We had no problem with that. We were asked in January to just postpone it, that you were sitting, you were busy doing other things. We had no problem with it at all. No, we didn't find anything that was irregular. Patrick was the one that did all of this. And if you want to jump in, Patrick? And
just briefly, again, I apologize for my tardiness. We were doing St. Jean-Baptiste and Terrace today. So I got here as quick as I could. They're doing some paving on the highway, etc. So my apologies. I couldn't leave Terrace till 5:30. Basically, it was back. Might have even been mid-September. The exact date is a little hazy because all our grants for federal and provincial are all due end of September or mid-October. So there was a lot going on. But in basic emails with city staff, and I'm not going to name names or put any blame here today, but we were told, instead of going before council and asking for the in-kind again for your festival, please fill out the community grant instead. And once the new council's in place, they'll start looking at it in January, which is what happened. I came here in January and spoke before you all, and that's basically where it was. So I did the grant, and it was a little difficult because we had to ask for a monetary amount, and $1,000 is what we asked, and we knew it would be less, and that's basically how it went.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
And so okay, that kind of clarifies a little bit for me. So on the grant application, because I'm just trying to remember, so you were. Are you saying that you were told that you had to put a money amount down? You couldn't ask for an in-kind donation?
I was not told that directly, but in reading how the grant, and I know what they say about assuming things, but that's what I understood to do.
Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Rice.
Just for clarification, so you asked for $1,000 and we gave you $500. Is that, and so had we given you $1,000, then you would have enough money and then some to cover the cost of the Civic Center rental or whatever it was. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Garon.
Did you know the cost was going to be the $900?
the first year, we were given $1,000, and then we had enough to do this and this and this and that. But all along, we wanted to have in kind, and I think that the first year it might have been a bit our fault, because I think that we gave, you can do this way or that way. I remember that the first year, the Civic Center was cheaper than that. And what I don't mean to say cheaper, I meant to say it was priced lower. And we one of the things with us is that if we have any money left over, we don't know what to do with it, because we're not supposed to profit from that. So that's the reasoning behind that. So this time, the rental was a little more costly than we had anticipated.
So the problem that we are always looking at is there's always people applying for grants, and you're not always guaranteed you're going to get the grant money that you apply for. So it's just unfortunate that that's the way it works. So just for your own information and others out there, when you apply for a grant, don't always expect that you're going to be getting the full amount or any of the grant at all. That's just the nature of the beast of applying. So it's up to council to decide. So you just never know what's going to happen in the end. So I would just caution the next time you do your budgets to, we try to come out ahead of time so you can deal with those kinds of things. If you know that you need that money, we try to let people know ahead of time. So maybe it's just because of the fact that your group starts in January that doesn't always work for you. I'm not sure if that makes any sense or not, but whenever we apply for grants for the city all the time, we don't always get what we apply for. We get very little or we get nothing. So this is what can we afford and what can't we afford. So, and I do appreciate your group's efforts in the community, as I'm sure all the council does. But I mean, that's just the fact of the nature of applying for grants.
Councillor Ashley.
Mrs. Dalton can go first, and then
I just want to rebuttal. Yes, absolutely. I understand all that. Absolutely. And which is why we don't want the money.
That's why you want the grant.
We just want to know that once a year we have the place. Just because it's we don't have enough money to deal with ambiguity. We need to know that every year we have it. And so for us, it's foremost in there. And you are absolutely right. Grant is by the amount of money that you have and whatnot. I understand all of that, and I don't want just because it's half. No, gosh, you got to give us everything that we need. This is why I thought that we'd make this easier all around, and just to ask you that once a year to just have the premise for us to have a good party.
Councillor Ashley.
So I totally see what you're saying, Mrs. Dalton. I guess it's the same problem that we have, is you want certainty to know, okay, that the cost of the Civic Center, when we use it, if we get in kind, that cost is covered. But when we are giving out those grants, we also want certainty in terms of how much cost is covered. So I'm going to ask the through staff, because I just wanted to clarify for myself, because I think when we were going through, when people are asking us in kind of donations, like using the Civic Center, etc., sometimes we might say, okay, we're going to grant the whole request. Sometimes it might say, well, we'll grant it, but up to $500 or up to $250 of that cost, and then the rest is covered by the group. But I understand the certainty, but maybe that's just unclear in the application process. I'm not sure, but I wanted to hear it from staff if I've got it correct, if that's how it works. If through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Howie. Mr. Rodin.
If I may, Your Worship, the Councillor Ashley is correct. What we do is when someone asks for an in-kind grant, say they want to rent the pool for a day. Well, what we do is we would estimate what we would charge out someone at market rates for the pool that day, and we would say, okay, your request for the pool is $1,400. So if council, in its wisdom, says, well, we can't really forgive $1,400 in prospective revenue, but we'll forgive $700, and we'll give you a $700 in-kind or offsetting grant, but you still have to come up with the $700. The other reason why there's a fixed amount to the grant is that there's, I guess, what I would call facility creep. An event becomes very popular, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the cost, the amount of revenue that the city is forgiving is increasing every year, and no one really is aware of that. For example, perhaps the first year it takes the one auditorium, then 2 years later it's taking the auditorium in 3 rooms, and then there's also the disposal fees of waste and garbage that also go hand in hand in that. So that has been the practice for the last number of years, is to estimate what the grant and aid request is. If it's an in-kind request, give that to council in its deliberations, and that council make a decision from there whether or not they want to forgive the full amount or a partial amount.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
So thank you. And so obviously council will make a decision after in our regular meeting. But just as a question for future, I'm wondering if this would be helpful. Would it be helpful in terms of grant applications in the future if there was like an approximate rental cost, or like if people are asking for in-kind services, so that at least you had an idea of how that budgeting would work? Would that be helpful? So you know, okay, renting the auditorium for one day is going to be about this much. So if that's what you're asking for in kind, that's how much you should ask for. Would that be helpful?
Thank you very much. And then again, I understood that. And I guess I need to really, really apologize, because it's obviously I'm not expressing myself properly. And so I guess don't be upset at me. I guess I'm just going to say it my way then. What I'm trying to say is we cannot afford any money for the auditorium. As you notice on our budget, this annual event for us is important to have the participation of the city, because Heritage Canada will not give us any money if we are not tied into the community to at least one-day event where they support our effort in kind, so whatever the cost is. And if you want to have a double verification of that, my executive director, he can hook you up with the Heritage Canada lady. That's very important in the nature of our association and all of the other association under the Federation also having grants for Heritage Canada. So for us, it's not really splitting the money and how much. The pool, I understand you would have staff and whatnot. We don't really have staff. We set up ourselves. We clean up ourselves, and I'm very proud to say that we do a very good job cleaning. And there hasn't been any requirement of staff, or maybe just, washing the floor or something like that after that might need to be done. But other than that, it's a low maintenance, really low key type of situation. So for us, it's very important in money wise for us, which we can't afford. And two is that to know that there is a continuation, and that every year, because Heritage Canada is not giving us any extra money for anything. We've been having $46,000 out of them for the last 10 years, and that's it, except for the 1 year when it was our 10th anniversary, and that we got a little more. So when we do our budget, everything is to the penny that we target. And so it is, in fact, quite frankly, the request every year. We don't want it to be ambivalent. We'd like to have that's the stability, so that we can have the security of knowing that it's going to happen every year.
So, Mrs. Dalton, if I could summarize, your request then is for the city to cover the $406,000 from the 2012 sugar. $406.
Oh, please, 406. Oh, Your Worship, please,
there
thank
you.
$406
from the use of the recreation center for the 2012 Sugar Shack, and going forward in the future, you'd like the city to waive all costs and charges for the use of the facility in perpetuity, so that you will always know that the Sugar Shack Festival will have a home there.
Yes, for the 1 day.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kenny, and then Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Dalton, were you not told that there was an increase in this year's rent for the Civic Center?
Councillor Kenny, I'm sure there's always going to be increases because it's the nature of the thing, and I understand that. I wasn't really looking for a price or anything else. I have this guy here to do all that for me.
No, I was just wondering if you weren't told that this year would be an increase.
No, I wasn't. As I said, I didn't ask the question. What we thought all along is that it was going to be status quo. We were just, please, could you wait to do this for this? So it was just, in all confidence, we didn't have as I said, we didn't have a problem with that. We've always been treated very kindly. We just acquiesced to what was being asked of us. Nothing at all was a problem.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
I'm curious with the recent passing of the Budget Implementation Act, Bill C-38. There's been cuts to Heritage Canada. I'm wondering if those cuts have affected your organization, or will they affect their organization for 2013?
The short answer to that is not yet. We have been told we had our AGM for all the associations in Vancouver a couple weeks ago that for 2013, so that would be fiscal year 2013-14, that the status quo is going to remain, but next spring that could change. So you're right. While we would love for this to become an annual thing, we'd like to grow it and make it not just a community event, but a regional event where people from out of town come to it, obviously at a time when not much is going on. But, of course, if the Canadian government decides languages or that kind of thing are going to be next cut, yeah, well, that could happen to us as well. But we've been told for 2013-14, which would be April 1st, 2013 to March 31st, 2014, and I hope I'm getting my dates right, that the status quo will remain for the time being.
Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess this is for Patrick. The proposed Sugar Shack budget 2012, is that for next year's 2013?
Considering time restraints, we haven't officially tweaked out a budget for January 2013 as of yet. So I included kind of basically what was the proposed budget for 2012, just so you would all have numbers in front of you and have a ballpark and idea.
Okay.
So my apologies for that.
But I noticed on the revenue side, you've got Port Ed with a donation of $500, and you don't have the City of Prince Rupert down.
Yeah, and that was the proposed budget going forward so that would have been done in October, November, about the same time we sent in the grant. So as mentioned, since the city the year before had been in kind, it hadn't been put down on the sheet yet because we didn't know how much that in kind would be. So in this instance, the final budget for 2012 would include if council agrees to forgive the 406, would say $906.75. Or if it stays as is, it would say $500 from.
I was just wondering why it was missing on, it was looking for the city's donation on here and the rental of the hall, but it's not on here. So.
Are there any further questions for the presenters?
Oh, it's up there. Okay.
Councillor Ashley.
So I understand now where everything is. The budget that's been presented to us here is the one that was proposed, and if we went and we looked at what the actual numbers were, that this would be changed in that revenue. You were only given $500 of the venue donation, and it cost $906. Is that correct? Okay. And so my other question then is, and I know this is getting a little bit nitpicky, I guess, but if it was $1,000 in your revenue, right, and it only costs $900, then there's $100 in your
$94.
Yeah, like it's 94. There's a $94 that are missing, I guess, if that makes sense. There's like you would still have $94 in revenue left over compared to your expenses. So that's what I realize it's dollars and cents, but
again, that budget was the proposed budget, not the final budget, which again I apologize for, but we can't until we know what the final decision is with the city. Once that's put to bed, then we'll have the final budget. So by all means, we can provide that to you as soon as we know. So, thank you.
Garon.
I guess what I'm looking for is your actual accounting for the 2012 event that you had, because that's not in front of me.
If you wish, I could provide that. I don't have it on me, obviously, but I can get it to you like lickety split.
That would be great.
Thank you for coming here this evening. The council will consider your request, and you'll. Councillor Thorkelson.
It's not a question, but I know AFNO has organized a meeting with HRDC or Service Canada or whatever it's called for tomorrow, and I just want to give them a chance to, it's about EI, and I just want to give them a chance to make that announcement, Your Worship.
Thank you. In my race to get back here from Terrace, although I did go the speed limit for those recording this at home.
Patrick, nobody believes that.
It's a good thing my wife isn't watching. But anyway, all kidding aside, Councillor Thorkelson is correct. We have two representatives from Service Canada making the trip, and they will be doing a presentation at in the Northwest Community College tomorrow from 1 till 3 p.m. And as mentioned, it's to discuss the new EI and CPP rules, and of course I glance at Councillor Rice when I say that. It is very important because we all know how that is going to affect our community. The two representatives who are coming are bilingual, so open to AFNO members. They have the presentations in English, but if you want to ask them a question in français, you can. But don't worry, the workshop's in English. You can ask questions in English, and there will be refreshments provided, and it's free. There's no cost. Room 189, and we're also doing it Wednesday in Terrace at Skeena Diversity, boardroom 10 a.m. Same thing. So thank you, Councillor Thorkelson, for mentioning that.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Dalton.
I wonder if I could add something. I think that perhaps maybe council is not aware of all the things that we do in town. We've just started, and there's so much more that we're going to do, but we also support CPF with their quest, and we participate. We give money to for a teacher to give French languages during tax time. We do tax for people if they want to. We also have a partnership with Bethel Baptist Childcare, which they do is the only childcare where they give a bilingual services, so the children learn French and English. So we have, and with our book mobile, we have now opened our territory where the Federation has recognized how hard AFNO have been working, and we're finally part of the North that we represent have finally been changed, and now we are on the Federation map where it has Haida Gwaii, Stewart, Hazelton, Smithers, Prince Rupert, and Terrace. And for us, it means, maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot for anybody else, but for us to finally be recognized and be on the map of the Federation for as representative of the North means a lot. We feel that we're accomplishing so much with so little money, but we're happy to do it, and we're very also supporting of everybody else that multiculturally. I mean, we're out for having a good party. And we like to strike association with everybody that. So, for example, multicultural. That's something that we're going to be doing again next year at the museum. So, please keep us in mind. We are the Service Canada things that we're doing. So, getting more and more involved, and we'll be doing more and more in our community to help people, and not just in French and the two languages. Thank you.
Thank you. For the last time, are there any further questions from members of council to the presenters? Thank you. As I said prior, the council will make a decision regarding your request, and you'll be notified.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again for
Thank
coming
you.
down.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome. Next, we'll go to question period from the public, and I'll first read the statement on the procedures of the Committee of the Whole meeting. For those of you present this evening and for those watching via television, I will explain that a Committee of the Whole meeting is a committee that consists of all members of Council. This meeting allows Council members to deal with issues in greater detail, but in less formal than a regular Council meeting. During this meeting, issues not formally adopted, but recommendations may be made at the next regular Council meeting. At this time, the recommendations of the previous Committee of the Whole meeting will be adopted and acted upon. Some key points to remember when making your presentation are: Council meetings are televised, and it's very important to introduce yourself and, if applicable, name of the organization that you are representing, and speak directly into the microphone in a clear voice. When presenting, please address any comments or questions to the chair of the meeting. Keep your presentation brief, 5 minutes only. Once you've completed your presentation, please ensure you summarize any requests or concerns, and the chair will then ask council members if they have any questions. Remember, there will be no decisions made at this meeting on any requests or concerns you have made. Lastly, requests will be referred to staff for review, report, and recommendation to the council. And we would appreciate your consideration of the time allotment. And I should tell you that the council has instructed me to be ruthless on the 5 minutes. I've never been ruthless before, so it's a brand new experience, but they have asked me to be very cognizant of the 5 minutes. With that in mind, I'll ask anybody who wishes to come forward and ask a question about the city's operations to please do so now. I'll ask a second time if there's anybody who wishes to come forward. Good evening. Your question this evening.
Larry Golden, citizen, Prince Rupert. The address is the same.
Your address is?
1601. Hasn't
Second
changed.
Avenue?
West.
Thank you.
My phone number is. I would ask about, but I hope you'll be telling us about what's happened with Watson Island, the court case, and the business transaction. But my question is, the city put out $300,000 to the resurfacing the soccer field. Since then, the port has come through with another group has come through, and so the city's payment, its amount has gone down to $200,000. So that means we've budgeted $300,000. We've got $100,000. So I was hoping that we could use that money for employing youth during the summertime. The canneries aren't hiring youth like they did, so I would also try to aim at maybe not just cleaning things up, but to do it as youth activism, trying to get kids and I would say the mid-school range, trying to get them to be doing meaningful and useful things as opposed to even strumming on the corner with your guitar. That's not what I was looking for. So I was hoping you would use the money, employ young people, and you have to do it fairly soon because we're right into the summer. Thank you.
Okay. answer to your question regarding Watson Island, when the city has some additional information, it'll be released to the public. With regards to the resurfacing of the AstroTurf at the field at Charles Hayes School, the cost is shared jointly between the City of Prince Rupert and the School District number 52. You're right, the Port has come forward through their community grant program and put $100,000 forward to the minor soccer in the City of Prince Rupert, but I would ask staff to comment on whether or not that changes the budgeted amount. Let's get
wait a minute. Another group came forward to do another 100,000 too, so that was 200,000.
Let's get a comment from staff.
Mr. Golden is correct in the fact that the city had budgeted $300,000, and that's what council approved. That $300,000 was specifically approved for this project. It wasn't approved for anything else. So to divert the funds to another project or to another operation would need an amendment to the council bylaw. Having said that, the numbers we're dealing are budgeted numbers, and a lot of things can happen between the beginning of a project to the end of a project to make the costs go up or down. I am hopeful, as I expect Mr. Golden is, that the project will come in and our portion will be less than 300, but until I see the last bill, I'm not, I don't want to start spending. I wouldn't recommend the council to spend the money somewhere else.
May I interject right there? The word is accumulated surplus. I think we've put $100,000 into numerous places that have been spent elsewhere. So I think we do it all the time.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
So this is a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. With the money that we put forward out of the budget, was that not out of like either reserves or accumulated surplus? It wasn't out of. Could you explain to me where the money was coming from? Thank you.
Without having the budget in front of me, it either came out of accumulated surplus or it came out of a reserve. If it came out of a building and equipment reserve, those monies are definitely earmarked for repairs and things from equipment. I can't say for sure whether or not that was where the allocation was. It may have come out of surplus. Nonetheless, it was allocated for this specific purpose.
Councillor Ashley.
That's just what I wanted to clarify. I do remember it coming out of something specific that we wouldn't have been able to divert to an idea such as Mr. Golden's, even without the rule that you were talking about, I think, in terms of we've already decided what that money was going to be used for. But I did want to say to Mr. Golden, I applaud your idea. It's great to think of youth, but unfortunately, as staff has said, I guess we can't use the money for that, really.
Are there any other questions to the presenter from members of council?
Could I come back? So responding to yours, so the court case has not been settled?
No comment. Thank you very much. Yes.
This isn't a question, but I don't want anybody who wants to apply for a fishing plant job to think that Mr. Golden knows that the fishing industry doesn't need any youth workers this year. They will need youth workers this year. They usually hire 150 to 200 every year. So I just want to make it clear that the fishing industry is not going down for the count, and we will undoubtedly need to hire workers this year.
Are there any further questions from anyone in the gallery regarding the city's operations? If not, I'll ask the council to consider. Yes, please come forward. Good evening. Would you like to press the button there?
Good evening,
there
Your
you
Worship, councillors. My name is Barbara Cool. I'm a resident of Prince Rupert, and I'm only speaking on my own behalf this evening. I've been in Prince Rupert for 7 years. I came to work here as a speech-language pathologist with young children. So in that capacity, I traveled to some of the outlying communities. Sometime within these last 7 years, I visited Lac aux Lambs, and in the course of my duties, I met Barb Henry, who has the education portfolio there. And she very graciously invited me home for lunch that day. And I had the honor of being in her home and having a very lovely meal prepared by Billy Sampson, her partner, her husband. And I didn't realize until just after Dana McKay's swim on Aboriginal Day on Thursday that this was the uncle for whom she was swimming in honor. And I just was so impressed witnessing Dana's swim. I just think it's a remarkable accomplishment, and that it sets her up as a very marvelous role model in our community and in the larger community. I was there to greet her. I didn't believe that she could accomplish that. It seemed unreal to me that anyone could swim through the ocean 52 kilometers as she did. But my last trip to Lac Willam's, I went to the rec center, and there she was working out, and I didn't realize at the time who it was. All these things I seem to learn after. But she did it, and I was there to witness it, as hundreds of other people were. So I just think it's a marvelous accomplishment that shouldn't go unnoticed and unrecognized in our community. I think that many more people should be aware of what she did, because I think that we in this community, we all know our young people need a role model. They need hope. They need to know that they can go forward. And I think she stands as a wonderful example of somebody that set goals. She accomplished them through her dedication, her hard work, her altruism. And she did that in a very humble way. It wasn't for her own glory at all. She did this in honor of her uncle, and that was very evident in everything she has said. So I really think I would really love to for you. I don't know what you can do as a group, but I just feel, I would like to see a Dana McKay Day in Prince Rupert, or give her the keys to the city, or what. I don't know how you acknowledge a very just unbelievable accomplishment and a very wonderful woman. So that's what I would like to propose, that you would consider what we could do. And because Canada Day is next weekend, I don't know if that's too soon, but just thought that might be something that would even come together. So that's why I came to see you.
Certainly, perhaps a letter of acknowledgement at the very least. But thank you for your words, and the council will certainly consider it.
Thank you.
And we'll let you know in due course.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else who has a question regarding the city's operations and would like to ask it? Good evening.
Name, Lothar, Shiza. First thing I wanted to point out to you is, are you aware there are, let me try to put it this different way.
And remember now, you have a 5-minute
time. Let me finish. How many people do you know that would work 5 weeks and get paid 4 weeks? Nobody, eh? Well, individuals.
Well, not exactly. I've worked
peanuts
for periods of time and got nothing. But
peanuts or next to nothing.
What's your question?
Well, what I'm trying to get across is just last week it was brought to my attention. I knew this before, but there are four months in the year where there are 5 weeks in the month, and a person on welfare is given a set amount each month, and yet there are 4 months where I have to stretch it out. There are things that I don't think would be appropriate to go into, but the government tries to say, well, go to the food bank or go to the soup kitchen, or
Right.
And what I'm trying to get across to the people that run these things, that they could do it better, but nobody listens.
So
I try again, and nobody listens.
So what would you like of this council?
Well, I'm just putting this forward to you guys that everybody's understanding is. If you go through a calendar, which I finally use this thing here,
right,
and just went online and found the dates that check issue dates, and then correspondingly went through and counted the weeks between, and I came up with 4 months of the year that there were 5 weeks. My question to council is, well, I've grown quite used to waiting and 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 waiting, and usually lots of times there's nothing happen. Talk to people, try to get a different perspective and all this. I find people don't understand something or don't know something, and they become insulted. And they, in the background, start yakking about you and all these sort of things. It's very inappropriate. It's not proper behavior. But last time I was here, I was told I would have an answer within two weeks.
Yes, we were waiting for you to come back because we didn't have an address to get a hold of you at.
No, I left that here a long time ago.
Okay.
I left phone number.
So your question about that is. Your question about that is with regards to the use of the facilities.
Well, so that I can get a message, so I can actually speak to the government.
Okay. The council has considered your request, and they've declined it.
Oh.
And they believe that there are easier ways.
Could somebody find this for me, because I've been trying to figure this out my own years for years and years.
The council declined the request, and they believe it would be easier if you were to use Facebook to get your message across.
Facebook?
Yes.
How the heck I do that?
If you could find somebody with the appropriate equipment, the council believes that would be a better venue to get your message across. And that's the answer from the council. You asked the council to consider the request, and the request has been declined with the suggestion that you use Facebook. Yes.
I just try to point out to you when you went bang.
Yeah.
Is that I tried for years and years. I tried the school board. I tried, Hack and Straight.
Well, if you'd like to drop in tomorrow, I'll be here.
Yeah.
And perhaps we could have a further discussion about it. But I have to be very cognizant also of the 5-minute time limit per presenter. But you're welcome to come and see me tomorrow. Maybe there's something we can do to find a way to facilitate you on Facebook.
Is there a problem, like something like I've run into before? Well, we can't do that because it would set a precedent, because then everybody else would come. Is that a problem?
No.
No, that doesn't enter the picture?
No, it's the matter of resources. It's the matter of staff time.
Oh.
Okay, but if you'd like to drop in tomorrow,
I see.
I can see if there's some other way that perhaps through the community at large you could be facilitated.
Sir, I'm going to give up. Thank you.
Okay.
Because that's just where it goes anyway.
Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward this evening and ask a question regarding the city's operations? If not, I'll ask the council to adjourn to reconvene to the regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. We'll adjourn to the regular council meeting. I'll ask council to consider the adoption of the agenda tonight for the regular council meeting of June 25th, 2012. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon, that the agenda be adopted as circulated. Is there any discussion? Question has been called. Those in favor? Thank you. The agenda is adopted. For tonight, there's 3 sets of minutes for consideration. First is the recommendation that the minutes of the Special Committee of the Whole Council meeting of June 4th, 2012 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next is the recommendation that the minutes of the special meeting of June 11th, 2012 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any errors or omissions? Councillor Garon.
Should there be a recommendation for last week's special committee on the whole, or is that the next agenda that'll be on?
Next agenda, Mr. Rodin? Yes. Any other questions regarding the... Not, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next is the recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 11th, 2012 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are also adopted. Under petitions and delegations, we have a presentation tonight from the Medical Facilities and Equipment Standing Committee. Some of the members are present this evening. Mrs. Kathy Bedard and Mr. Marty Bowles. If you'd like to come forward, both of you, make yourselves comfortable there. Good evening. Thank you for coming down here. I'm not being impolite or unattentive. I'm just going to head for the water, but please start your presentation. It's good to see both of you here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here, finally, at last, to give you our report on the medical facilities and equipment. Dr. Sterling was planning to be here, but he's been having some health challenges. And when we both got up this evening, I went, oh my goodness, we're all hobbling around. So it must be more birthday cake candles or something that's happening. You just told me to speak for myself. I want to say thank you on behalf of the committee for giving us the opportunity to learn more about the excellent facility that we have in our community. You never really know what you have in a community until you actually have an opportunity to speak to staff and to see the actual facility in motion and in play. In our research, we explored 6 hospitals in trying to compare how Prince Rupert ranks with the services provided. The Bulkley Valley Hospital, Dawson Creek Hospital, Quesnel Terrace, and Campbell River. On page 9 of our report, it indicates that out of 70 services provided by Prince Rupert and other hospitals, Prince Rupert leads the group with 56 out of the 70 services provided. Prince Rupert has a specialized general practitioner in oncology. We have electronic access to teledermatology and telehealth for cardiac patients. And our new psychiatrist has a heavy workload. We don't purport to be experts. We are a citizen committee. But within page 14 of the report, we have included some general observations and a summary. For your additional information, ladies and gentlemen, this project in total took to 80 to 100 hours of volunteer work. Let me just get this up and running. We studied basically the facility, the capital equipment list, the dental equipment and support, surgery in specifics, orthopedics, transportation, which was both the bus transportation and the medevac services, Acropolis Manor. And we have included a capital equipment list that has just been upgraded by Sheila Gordon Payne. Sorry, just a little slip there. I'm 16 years.
Those old titles are hard to sometimes drop.
So on a mandate that council set in April of 2011, the committee has basically stayed the same, although we've had a couple of additions. And I must say that each and every one had provided its support and volunteerism on its own level. People had health issues, work issues, and just recently my partner here has had some damage to his eye, so he cannot read for a long extended period of time. So my apologies for my voice, and I hope you'll just jump in whenever you want to, Marty. We kindly acknowledge a great deal of support from the staff of Prince Rupert, Sheila Gordon-Payne, Angela Zabo, Dr. Smith, Mara Cote, Dr. Pide, Dave Christie of Diversified Transportation, who does the medical bus, Patrick Hussey of the BC Ambulance Service, and many others. We wanted to extend our heartfelt thanks to these individuals for our ongoing questions and queries and getting us information in a timely fashion. We wanted to give you some background around Northern Health Authority. Its mandate is through the efforts of dedicated staff and physicians and in partnerships with communities and organizations. The Northern Health Authority provides exceptional health services for Northerners. We didn't think that the report would be complete unless we told you a little bit about the social-economic indices that have basically placed Prince Rupert and the area in a ranking that sometimes is not the best. So if you look at the table there, Prince Rupert and Haida Gwaii. Now the worst ranking is the lower numbers. So if I look at Prince Rupert in overall socioeconomic indices, we're 10th worst ranked in the province of BC. For economic hardship, and that can be supported by a lot of people in this room. We're second out of 78 in BC. Education concerns, 10 out of 78. Crime, 25 out of 78. Health problems, 45th. So you can tell about the services that we do have in our health service, and this has brought us up a little bit. So we're halfway. And children at risk and youth at risk, well, councillors previous and this one are known that we've had an unenviable position there. Do you want to say anything? No? Okay. We thought that we would look at a variety of communities for you. And they varied in size, but we were looking at demographics, we were looking at the population. And so we have chosen the communities from the Bultgina, Chaco, Burns Lake, Smithers, Dawson Creek, Terrace, and Campbell River. And a lot of people asked us why Campbell River, although it has a larger population, it has a similar demographic in its population that we thought might be pertinent to the services that are rendered in the community. We actually, thanks to Sheila Gordon-Payne, she broke the actual services down, and our ranking is showed off to the right there. So in general services, we have 8 of 9 services in that list, and we're only lacking respiratory services. In cancer services, you can see that we're one of the 6 communities that has cancer service within our community, and the only one. So very, very high ranking there. In imaging, we're missing 2 pieces, and that's the nuclear medicine for cardiac and non-cardiac, and that's patients usually go to Terrace from this community or this region. So we're 8 out of 10 services there. Mental health, we have 2 out of 3. Where are we? And it's only because we have Cornell that has a specialized service in mental health servicing. Outpatient services, we rank 8 out of 10. And we're missing, oh heavens, hemodialysis and homie. Well, Perinatal, we have 2 out of 2 services. And in these services below, we have 16 out of 22. I'm hoping that all of you got this report. Okay, so I spend a lot of time.
Yes, all members of council did get it.
Thank you. So you can see, as the details show, that we have 56 out of 70. Terrace has 47 out of the 70 services available. Smithers has 39 out of 70 services. Dawson Creek has 38 out of 70 services listed. Burns Lake has 37 services listed. And Campbell River, a larger community by population standards, has 50 out of 70 services listed. We stand out as a service hospital that has physiotherapy and the only cancer services in the above-mentioned facilities. As of March 2012, during our conversation with hospital staff, Prince Rupert now has a specialized general practitioner in oncology, Dr. Seold's regular clinics for both screening and ongoing monitoring and surveillance of patients in post-recovery. Teledermatology will be available as soon as the specialists and equipment are in place. Telehealth is one of 3 pilot projects in the province as a regional clinic due to our high statistics of heart failure. And our new psychiatrist has a growing patient load. Staff have mentioned that it is difficult to find locums to fill positions in Prince Rupert. Prince Rupert continues to experience chronic shortages of nursing staff and has no physiotherapists at the time of this writing. The facility, we did a tour, and it was quite eye-opening and quite informative. I think Marty would agree. Did you want to comment on the facility from your perspective?
Yeah, having used it much too often lately. The one thing I want to bring out on all of this with the facilities is 2 things. One, the people that we asked the questions of were unhesitating in coming back with answers and complete answers, and I really felt that nothing was hidden away or people didn't want to talk about any part of it. People were most outgoing in all of it. And the second thing is that when we went outside to look for other facilities as part of the hospital, such as the healthcare bus and things like that, people went out of their way to come and give us that information, and I know Councillor Kinney was part of that as well. The one thing that I will say on all of it, though, is it's the people that make the difference. You can have all the facilities, you can have all of the equipment, you can have everything there available, but if you don't have the right people at the right time doing the job, and we didn't find anywhere that wasn't the case. And then the last point I'll make on that is that it's never-ending increase and always looking for more things that they can do and ways that they can help. Just in the time that we did this, when we started and when we finished, we were updating constantly. People were coming up, oh, no, last time you were here, and that was only a couple of weeks ago, now we've got this. So it was amazing to see how people were constantly upgrading us and giving us more information as things were continuously upgraded within the hospital facility itself.
Sheila Gordon-Payne mentioned that the hospital services are provided to walk-in patients. Our hospital averages about 90 to 95% occupancy and can fluctuate between 70 to over full at times. And they use a good BC bed line to help people find beds in other communities. So it's that constant service to people and trying to help them the best they can. I mean, you can always put more demand on it, but I think we walked away from our conversation with the hospital staff and others feeling that the staff there, the people that we have living amongst us, are really, really trained to do the job and want to help as much as they can when they can. We have just received, thanks again to Sheila Gordon-Payne, a new capital equipment list that's included in there. So it's constantly filling. The hospital received a piece of equipment from a local volunteer organization. I mean, it's that involvement of community that has brought this service to where it is. We talked to Marius Pinar, and he basically said our hospital is reasonably well equipped. As with any other hospital in BC, we are chronically underfunded, and if it were not for the generous donations from the community, we would have a big shortage of up-to-date and state-of-the-art equipment. The Cancer Talent Auction Committee and the Hospital Auxiliary come to mind. Dr. Frank Pride, we interviewed him, and he wanted to make some comments. He was basically happy with the theater equipment. He was concerned around no dedicated dental facilities at Acropolis Manor, and he has suggested that they need a dental chair, a mobile cart for gas, water, and air supplies, or a dental inspection lamp. And he figures that the budget item for these, the budget cost for these items would be about $20,000. We had a wonderful visit with Dr. Smith, and it was only because we were in the right place at the right time. So he took a 20, 30, probably close to an hour, I think, out of his very busy time to talk to us about orthopedics and the fact that there are 85 orthopedic surgeons in BC without hospital assignments, and we wonder why people have to wait for these kinds of services. Transportation, wow. And Councillor Kenny was with us and unfortunately has had to use that facility. But we had never seen such a well-equipped bus. And through the Northern BC Winter Games, I know that I rode 14 years on buses, and I've never seen a bus like that. Well-equipped facility with opportunities for electrical and everything else, but they also have a wheelchair-equipped washroom so that there is an opportunity for someone that has a wheelchair can be rolled into the washroom, and they're treated with dignity and supported well. They have it together in this service. It's only $30, and it can be paid in cash or credit card. They have arranged a place for people to stay with reasonable rates in Prince George. It's equipped with 44 seats, and they're on tracks so that if they can move the seats. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece of equipment that's there.
I'll just make a couple of comments on that one. One, the driver I was particularly interested in. He is trained in CPR. And he is incredibly good with the patients. He knows there's other facilities available for him in emergency needs on the bus, and he's trained to use it. So I was most impressed with that. This is the first, and I believe it's still the only bus that's been retrofitted for the wheelchair washroom in BC. And so that was really something to discuss, to understand. And then the last thing is with the movable seats, they have a lot of ability to move things around to make things comfortable for the patients as they travel. If they've got a leg in a cast, they can move the seats, and they actually have supports for them so that they can use them on the bus. So, and then, sorry, one more thing. If you're traveling with a companion, and again, Councillor Kenny knows this one better than I do, the companion travels for the same price.
Yes, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Kathy. Kath, that price of $30, it's $40. $40 one way, $80 return to Prince Rupert.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. And it's about 62% of capacity, so there's still room for more people to use the service. In 2011, 12,700 patients were transported throughout the Northwest in that year. Value added, they basically transport all of the Red Cross equipment to all the hospitals free of charge. And one thing that really got us interested is that they actually work with the Ministry of Highways to identify areas that wildlife come to the road, and so that they make those suggestions that salt licks be used to keep the animals off the road, therefore less transportation difficulties. Yep.
Sorry, one more point on that. It's one-stop shopping as well. All you have to do is phone one phone number for it, and they look after all the rest for you. And that's just been added last year. I think they went to that.
the BC Ambulance Service, or the Medevac service. It is one of the 3 Sikorsky S-76 helicopters in the province with a dedicated flight crew on call. They can provide complete service while in flight with the exception of advanced cardiac care. They can administer ALS, injections, etc. They service the Prince Rupert region, Hartley Bay, Kitkatla, Una River, Port Simpson, as well as Terrace and North, Kitimat, New Ianche, Greenville, and Haida Gwaii also receive service. One of the parts that we really, truly enjoyed in our tour of the facility, both the hospital and Acropolis Manor and Summit Place, and thanks to Angela Zabo for her excellent tour guide. It is an amazing facility, and what we saw was everything from staff working very, very hard and very committed to the patients there, or the residents there, but also the volunteerism. And, it's many of our neighbors that we see that are doing other things as well, but it truly is a community service, and they do open it up to community if you have someone that's living with you that needs a bath that can't access a normal bath, they're welcome to make an appointment to use the facilities there.
I would add to that also that the nature of the facility changed dramatically from when it was first built, and that the style of people that are living there has changed quite dramatically as well. So they've had to make a lot of very quick moves and changes in facilities and the way it's put together and the staffing, and they seem to be coming around to a more stable situation with it now, which I think will help considerably. The other part is that there's also the assisted living section there that to me was really interesting because I didn't actually even know that was available in Prince Rupert. So there are things up there that many people probably don't know about that would be useful.
And one of the comments that were made was that we are seeing as a community, as we age in place, more and more occasions of dementia. So that's adding another responsibility to an already pushed service in our community. So our observations in Council, generally the services provided by the Prince Rupert Regional Hospital meet or exceed other community supports. Prince Rupert Regional Hospital is the leader in the provision of cancer care and supports. Staffing, locums, and nursing are in short supply. We have to give a great well done to the existing staff. They're very enthusiastic and have great pride in the work and great dedication to the people that they service in this community in particular. Tremendous support from the community through fundraising and volunteering. And this is a comment from Councillor Kennedy, the transportation provided by NHA is enthusiastically recommended by patients and the company, family, or others. Some concerns expressed with regard to medical emergency service and getting home after medevac support, so more information should be provided to the patient or the family involved. And the health system in the region benefits a great deal by volunteers and outside community funding. That concludes our report. Thank you very much for the opportunity of doing this for you. It has been a learning experience and has been very, every time I walk away I went, wow, we have a great, great health system here. Doesn't mean that it's the best in the world, but it's, I think it does what it should do for this community, and it continues to need our support, and we can always grow for more.
Thank you very much. Before we see if there's questions from members of council, I'd like to thank you, Mrs. Bedard, and Mr. Bowles, and Dr. Sperling, and the other members, and also Mrs. Gordon Payne. There's been a lot of work that went into this. As a result, the council and the greater community are better informed on what some of their tax dollars go to through the Northwest Regional Hospital District. And it's important to be aware of the status of our facilities in the community. So your efforts and your certainly your time and your energy and the report itself are all very much appreciated. And speaking on behalf of the council and the city at large, we've never had this information before, which is the reason it was requested and the committee was set up. So you certainly have our thanks.
Thank you very much.
Are there questions from members of council? Councillor Thorkelson.
I want to thank you very much. I have a number of questions. I guess my thing I'm most interested in is if there was going to. Did you get the feeling that which issue was most important to the staff, the doctors and the nurses and the staff? What issue was the most important that the city should work on to resolve, or the community should work on to resolve?
Well, I think it was stated and restated that nursing is in short supply, and the ability to fill the locum positions. So that all, staffing, that human resource support, and the ability to react to those vacancies would be probably the primary concern that we've heard.
Councillor Thorkelson.
And is that funding that's the problem, or is it a problem getting people?
Well, okay, if you can pay more, you're going to get more. There's no question about it. But no, it's getting the people, especially in the nursing field. It is very difficult to find the qualified people. When we were in the Acropolis Manor, to get those specialized people was extremely difficult there. It's finding the people, not necessarily the money or the funding.
And I think there was an understanding that if we could recruit the people here and use UNBC's doctor program and using the nursing supports, the people that train here and live here know that it's a place that they want to live. It's got all of the services, and it may rain a little bit more than other communities, but it still is a great place to live. So I think there needs to be a marketing campaign about that, or participating as a community in the recruitment. I know that Shirley Gordon Payne does a recruiting thing, but maybe the city could partner with them to make that more attractive as a community.
Councillor Thorkelson.
Yes, so the budget is there, and it's just a problem recruiting. That's what I was wondering, and I noticed in your report about Acropolis Manor that it says that 2.8 hours of care are needed, but that or 3.5 is needed, and there are enough staff to provide the provincially mandated 2.8 hours of care. So the difference between the 3.5 and 2.8, is that taken from other parts of the hospital service to supply the 3.5? Is it done by volunteers, or is it a gap that needs to be filled?
Yeah, it's all of the above. I think that it is a gap, but I got the feeling that they filled that gap with existing services. But I think life would be a lot better and less stress for existing staff if that gap was filled.
Yeah, I also want to add that you cannot believe the amount of support up there from volunteers. I mean, there were students in there doing their community work. There were so many relatives of people that were in there. There were people who just drop up there on a regular basis. It was amazing. There were people all over the place volunteering there. And they do try and fill up as much of the gap as they can, but there's some trained services that they just can't.
Yeah, that was my concern, was whether, if we just have the staff is just ending up working harder, working through their breaks and doing that kind of thing, or just trying to hurry everything along so that but 3.5 hours, it's not like saying you need 12 pieces of paper, and if you just work faster, you can pass the 12 pieces of paper over. If you need 3.5 hours, you need 3.5 hours, and that's and again, if it's a staff shortage or if it's a funding shortage, right? The provincial government only mandates 2.8, then is there only funding for 2.8? Therefore, you'd have to steal it from somewhere else. And so then, is it part of the things that the city should be participating in a campaign that's saying that as we get older, we need to have more services provided in our institutions. That's what I was wondering because this report is on the facilities and it's what we should as a community concentrate on in order to try to improve the use of the facilities.
Certainly, Mrs. Bedard.
Well, and just in response to that, I think that, more conversation with the staff so that you can be, or the representative staff, so that you can be more aware of the gaps and that you can take that further for them. So, in partnership, taking the community through both the facility as well as the political side, I think would really help.
Councillor Thorkelson.
I'll make this my last question for now, Your Worship, but I was wondering, this was, and again, it's not knowing how to compare or decide whether something is good or something is bad. So on page 10 of the report, it says that our hospital averages 90 to 95% occupancy, and we're short of beds about 1 week per month. Is this what is considered to be acceptable, or do we actually need more space?
I don't think we can actually answer that one clearly for you. Of course, when they need the capacity, they would like to have more space. But it's the same thing we face in the school district. The greater your occupancy, the greater your use of your budget is. So I know, having recently been there myself and stuffed in a back room, that they did the best they could given the circumstances. So yes, we are overfilled at certain times, but they are using BC Bedline, it seems, very effectively to find vacancies elsewhere, and also to bring other people to ours when we need to, when we have space as well. So they are making best use of what is available, I believe. That's the best answer I can give you, Joy. Sorry. Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, it just always is concerning when somebody has to, use BC Bedline and move out of the community to receive services. And one, I have no idea what the rest of the province is like, but if you have to move people out of town 1 week out of every 4, that seems to me to be problematic. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I also wanted to say thank you. It's a very detailed and very informative report. What I'm wondering, because I know that Councillor Thorkelson sort of identified, kind of the number one concern being difficulty to attract people, etc. So from the committee's perspective, do you see a next step for council in terms of a further committee in like out of sort of the recommendations and your observations? That's basically what my question is. Do you see a further role for council to play in this?
Well, sort of shooting from the hip, if you will. I think that, there might be a use for an advisory committee. At one point in time, there was an advisory committee, so that there's a committee similar to what you had that was sort of non-political, so it was looking at from a perspective of what's best, what is needed, and sharing that information. I think that, if you can, if you have people that are just there and observing, and there's nothing, they're not looking for specifics. We were looking at facilities and equipment. That's what our view was. That might be a way to do it. But that's taking a step back or doing something that we did in the past. So, but it's worth discussing, I think.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you again. very much appreciated. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I have one more thing I do have to say on this. I want you all to know that this really would not have happened without Kathy's really extra hard work on it, because believe me, a lot of us were come and go, and she did by far the lion's share of all of this. So she's the one that deserves it here. I hope you realize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you again. Next, we'll move on the agenda to reports and recommendations. There's a report from the city planner. This concerns an application for a development variance permit at 1083 Ambrose Avenue, and it comes with a recommendation that the development permit application number DP-12-09 for 1083 Ambrose Avenue proceed to public notification. Mr. Krekic, good evening. Would you like to outline your report on this matter?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the first reading of this report, and it concerns a property at 1083 Ambrose Avenue. It responds to the application which we received on June 8th, which is attached to your report, and I'm just going to leave this specific slide on the pictures. The attached application is for the variance to the backyard setback. This particular building is located at 1083, as I mentioned earlier, and this is a new built. Lost the cursor. Can you see a cursor on the screen a little bit? So this is a new built. It's an infill, and the building is located precisely on the rear property setback, and I will just estimate it that it's approximately here. For the next meeting, I will have the drawing that will show it. The applicant wishes to build a balcony, a porch that will cover, that will provide a porch for the second floor and provide a cover for the exit towards the back. The property will, the encroachment is approximately 7 meters, so it will be within 3 feet of the rear property line, and I estimate that approximately here. In this specific location, in fact, if you look at this slide, you'll see that there are a number of properties that are some quite liberally encroaching onto the city properties. In fact, a lot of the backyards in this area are Terra Nova. The issue that we need to work with is that there's a sewer main in the back, and so generally, as long as the sewer main is unencumbered, we're not really essentially following up on these encroachments. It is very unlikely that anything will happen between the property and the Rushbrook parking lot. The views, in terms of the views and encumbrances of such nature, are all negligible, and really the application requires council approval prior to proceeding to the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Krekic. Are there any questions from members of council? If not, I'll ask, or Councillor Kinney, please go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that the applicant have permission to seek approval from the public notification.
Right, the development variance permit applicant for 1083 Ambrose Avenue proceed to public notification. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Krekic. Next is a report from the city planner. It's entitled Backyard Hen Keeping. It comes with a recommendation that council indicate the amendment to the zoning bylaw council initiate the amendment to the zoning bylaw to allow backyard hens, and subject to successful passing of the amendment, schedule further amendments to the livestock prohibition bylaw number 2987, 1996, also adjustments to the dog control bylaw number 3250, 2008, or creation of a new animal control bylaw and associated policies. Mr. Krekic, would you like to outline your report?
Yes, Your Worship. This report is a response to the presentation made by Samantha Lewis on March 26th. On a proposal to allow backyard hens within the City of Prince Rupert municipal boundaries. I did not include that report in her presentation because Council already has it in their information packages.
Right.
I will speak. I will address technical parts. By technical parts, I mean the bylaw matters. In the analysis section here, I will just in the background, I will speak a little bit on the experiences in other communities with applications of similar nature. Over the past decade, this topic has gained a fair amount of publicity and attention, and it appears it's never without a controversy. The application of similar nature was successful in some and not successful in other communities. Amongst the largest communities in Canada, Vancouver voted in favor and Toronto voted against it. And we're lucky to have examples in our region where in Terrace they voted for, and in Smithers it didn't pass even to this stage of evaluation. The concerns and considerations are relatively finite. There's only so many things that can be on the table. And they generally include noise, odor, conflict with dogs and cats, which are pets. I'm sure that there are other pets that may be involved in some specialty situations. Attracting of urban wildlife, things like rodents, raccoons, foxes, wolves, is prevalent in the area. Diseases and the entire spectrum of humane keeping and disposal of animals. Then there's also a cost of regulations from licensing to inspecting to dealing with good ideas gone wrong. The wisdom of different decision rests with those who made it. And in other words, every concern and consideration can be argued from two extremes, and decisions by each community which test this question rests with the aligning of community interests. Within the context of analysis and this whole issue of bylaws, the permitting the keeping of backyard hens is different in different communities, and it's commensurate to bylaws which they have in force. There was a reference in Samantha Lewis' presentation that we can do it just as simply as City of Terrace did, and by amending a zoning bylaw and making a permitted use. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. City of Terrace has an extensive animal control bylaw, and in fact, majority of their requirements is seated inside the animal control bylaw. In fact, they had keeping of wildlife of stock already existing in City of Terrace. Not to belabor the point, what we really need to do is we need to amend official community plan to make it, a zoning bylaw to allow as a permitted use. We need to amend the keeping of livestock bylaw to allow chickens to be kept as a livestock in City of Prince Rupert. And then we have to deal with this, with licensing and regulations, which we only have a very specific dog bylaw. And we are not, actually, I haven't really gone to the point of testing it with the regulatory staff of the city, how we're going to manage that piece. There are So there are some options, but rather than descending into details, it suffices to say that a substantial amount of time will have to be dedicated to drafting and adopting above noted instruments, as they will all have to pass before your test. The experiences in communities where they permit keeping of hens is relatively new, perhaps still on the wings of the first set of hens, which longevity ranges to about 4 years. And generally, the first set of licensed owners are keeners and manage their flocks properly. In other words, the controversies fanned by the media during the review of topics are by and large quiet. I've taken enough time to come up with this report, and I didn't do extensive research on this matter, Your Worship. But as an example, in the city of Terrace, after a fairly extensive process, they have four licenses for chickens. And it appears there are a couple of more that are in the wings of coming forward. On the internal referral, I've received internal staff referrals. I've received from essentially no response to a fairly strong opinions against it. I also did some external referrals, and I contacted Northern Health Authority, who deal with this matter by issuing a number of papers that were generated from the experience. And essentially, their comment is that for every concern I mentioned earlier, there's a reasonable answer that may require a fair amount of work or tasks, but there is an answer. And their fallback is that the locally grown food is something that they and we as a society encourage. SPCA, unsolicited, supplied also a fairly detailed document in which they comment. Their comments are generally negative towards keeping of the hens in the thing.
You said SPCA, but I wanted you to just differentiate that the Prince Rupert SPCA has written a letter with a negative tone not in support of this, but the British Columbia SPCA in general actually does endorse or support the keeping of backyard hens. So their personal opinion in Prince Rupert is actually contrary to their provincial position on it. So.
Thank you for that clarification. In fact, they kind of have the same sheet where they start from, and then again, larger provincial bodies usually find a general statement which leads towards every of these items can be addressed, as we have the technology and know-how. And generally, as a society, there appears to be continuous effort towards locally grown food. That really leads me to the conclusion. By the way, cost of this process will be commensurate to the amount of bylaw amendments that we have to do. It will be all done by staff. And really commenting, based on my referrals and such, and I've had not very many, but I've had few approaches by citizens. There were some negative, there were some positive, but really the only conclusive answer, other than having perhaps a cow meeting dedicated towards something like this, is a public hearing where the community can comment and the council can make a decision conclusively. That's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Cricket, Councillor Ashley?
Some might be questions, some might be more
Certainly.
Just in general.
Thoughts? Yeah.
And thank you, Mr. Cricket, for a detailed report as always. I guess there's some things that I'm just trying to wrap my head around, and I think sometimes things are simple and we make them complicated. That's my personal opinion. And I'm not saying you, I'm saying just in general, it seems that sort of thing happens. I'm not saying that all of the things that are being said that would need to be done in terms of amending zoning bylaws, etc., wouldn't need to be done. But I guess when I see other communities having done it, I'm not sure we would need to reinvent the wheel and then research things again that somebody else in another community have already researched. And so I guess I'm not seeing as much time. I certainly am not in favor of this if this is going to take up a huge amount of staff time. But I think there's probably ways that we can go forward with this if the rest of council is in agreement that it's not going to take as much staff time. Because I think we can look at what other people have done and tweak it a little and make it fit ours. I mean, I can speak from the teaching profession. We do that all the time. I mean, I'm looking at what other people do, and I don't like necessarily go through and check every single thing. I check to make sure it's correct and it will work. And then if it works for me, I'll use it. I don't necessarily spend the 20 hours that somebody did putting it together. So I certainly appreciate knowing that certain bylaws are going to need to be changed. But I'm not sure I'm convinced that it's going to take as much time as it seems like it is in the report. So that's kind of my first comment. Because when I look at it and I remember back to the presentation that was given to us and some of the concerns that have been brought forward, I mean, the things about noise, the things about dirt, pest infestation, etc., having specific pen requirements and fence requirements, I think, would take care of that. And I think somebody else in another district probably has those requirements. There's probably something out there. I stand correct that it could be wrong, but I think that is probably there. In terms of licensing and regulations, I think probably somebody else has that. So I'm going to get my first question then. I'm not sure why the dog bylaw would need to be, and I'm sure there's a good reason, but just when I look at it and I see dog bylaw, I'm not sure why the dog bylaw needs to be changed to allow backyard hens.
It's a fairly simple answer. You used to have animal control bylaw. When the animal control bylaw was put out in lieu of dog bylaw, there was going to be a succession of other bylaws, and so now we only have bylaws that regulate dogs.
Councillor Ashley.
So if that's the case, I'm just going to ask a question that hopefully is simple as well. Could we, instead of amending the dog bylaw, which I understand was not when I was on council, but an extensive amount of time was put into putting that together, could we not adopt a backyard hen bylaw that dealt with the licensing regulations that was separate from that?
I'm going to acquiesce to the corporate administrator. The bylaw creation is probably a little bit more in his purview.
I'd have to look. I can't tell you right now.
Certainly. Councillor Rice, Mr. Krekic, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I didn't want to make my report to sound that I am trying to be anything more than quite open, because really the wisdom of decision rests with you, and I mentioned that there are communities who said yes or no. My note about substantial amount of time is just when I look at my desk, I am only me, myself, and I don't really have anybody else. So when I see my desk, I can say substantial amount of time means it's going to take me approximately 80 to 100 hours to execute this entire set of circumstances. That's my estimate. That's basically two weeks over a period, 2.5 weeks over a period of probably 6 to 8 months.
Councillor Rice and then Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I guess I'm still confused on why the dog bylaw has to be amended. Because if I'm looking at bylaw number 2987 right now, which is the bylaw to prohibit the keeping of livestock within certain areas of the city. And I was looking at the report that Samantha Lewis submitted, whereas we could just add one line that says basically except the prohibition does not apply to keeping of hens. So can we not just...
Councillor Rice, if I could.
Yeah.
These bylaws, particularly bylaws where there's an enforcement provisions, would get reviewed by legal counsel. somebody may come in a very well-meaning manner and say, all you need to do is add a line here.
Right.
We could find that if you have to use that bylaw to do some enforcement, that the bylaw does not work. So while it's fine for people to make suggestions on how to amend bylaws, the staff here would determine, especially a regulatory bylaw, which could end up in court and could have fines attached to it, the staff would work with legal counsel there.
Okay, well, I guess I'm confused. What do dogs have to do with livestock then? I need clarification on that.
Back in approximately 2006, Council at that time entered into a fairly substantial change to the then current animal control bylaw. But at the end of the day, they only dealt with dogs, and because it probably, this is my interpretation, because it probably took a lot of time to get to a certain point, everybody felt comfortable that the biggest issue we have here was dogs. So let's adopt something for dogs specifically. It stopped right there, didn't go any further. I cannot tell you anything more than that.
Any other questions, Councillor Rice? Okay, Councillor Thorkelson and then Councillor Garon.
Well, I think that I would support the chicken bylaw and probably hen bylaw. Probably not say that those are our biggest priority, but that whenever Mr. Krekik found an extra hour over the next year, he could maybe get it going. Not that it would be your priority, I would suggest. The only concern that I have is about getting rid of the chickens, of killing the chickens when they quit laying, right? And that's the only concern I have. And whatever we do, we need to just be clear that they have to end up somewhere safe. And that we're very clear about how people get rid of their chickens at the end of their lives. That's all. I just really don't want to hear any horror stories of people missing when they're cutting their heads off or whatever, because you're not supposed to do that in your backyard, right? So anyway, that's all. My concern is only what you do with those at the end. Other than that, I think that having gardens in people's backyards and growing our own food and moving towards self-sustainability, I think is probably a good thing. And I also agree with Mr. Krekik. I bet you half a dozen people are already doing it in Rupert, which he doesn't say in his report, but probably another half dozen people would end up doing it. And that's probably because it looks like a lot of work if you've got to comply. I mean, to make your cage the way it needs to be made. What I would be interested in is if in Vancouver or Terrace there had any control issues. You know, like if the bylaw officers are over to to look after noise problems, or if it's really just passed unnoticed.
As I said in my report, I think that on the wings of these fairly new bylaws, that I think we have keeners, people who are quite keen about it. You know, in the limited sort of telephone conversations and people I was able to get hold of to talk to, you know, they haven't come across a good thing gone wrong yet. Now, having said that, and by the way, we create our bylaws and our laws for the lowest common denominator. We create them so that we can capture that worst case scenario. You know, if we were creating bylaws, you know, and we were all very, very keen to be understanding each other, then one line should be enough. We should be all good neighbors to each other. But we really have to create a bylaws when we decide to create bylaws to deal with these matters that are infinitely sometimes questionable but why we are concerned with that, because they're experiences. And yes, Councillor Ashley, you know, I'm not going to sit down and create a new bylaw. This will be all about borrowing. But there are certain things that are very, very sort of, they're certain for City of Prince Rupert. And one thing that I couldn't really wrap my mind around yet, and this is something that I would ask internal staff to really come in seriously, is that we have perhaps the highest precipitation in British Columbia. And I wasn't able to talk to Victoria, which, by the way, doesn't limit number of chickens, which is interesting. They do allow chickens. They just kind of let it be a process. And, I would have to contact some of these places, or I would ask engineering and public works and now regulatory bylaw officers to contact some of these places and say, when the amount of rain increases, does that make a difference for percolation of chicken feces?
Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I liked what Joy had to say, and that was part of my comments I was going to make. My question to staff is, was this part of our strategic plan? Was this one of the items?
No, this came up because a member of the public came forward and suggested we allow chickens.
So I think it would be great to test it publicly in a public hearing, but I'm not in any hurry right now. Like I know Mr. Krekic has other things on his plate that we want to get working on, and I think we need to prioritize what we want Mr. Krekic to do in a priority manner, and I don't think this is something that needs to be high on priority. I do think it's a great idea and it should be tested, but I'm not in favor of hurrying up on this process.
Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments. And the other thing I would add to that, because, again, I am concerned about how much staff time and where our strategic plan is. And it should be kind of down at the bottom of the list. It's important because people are concerned about it, but we have other things on our priority list. And I'm not sure how would be best to do this, but we did have a proponent come forward that had done an extensive amount of research, and I'm wondering with some of the questions, I think we should be putting people that come and ask us back to work. If there's questions we don't have or research what needs to be done, I kind of think we should say, okay, what else can you find for us to make it easier for us to help you and help us help you? So I would kind of try and do some of that.
Any other questions of Mr. Krekic? Certainly.
I don't think we should. I think we should allow for backyard hens, but I again agree that it doesn't hit the top of the priority list considering our strategic plan. So I would like to move the recommendation. I just would like to make the comments that I've heard both the pros and cons of, and I've heard from the community support and not support for this proposal. The issue about euthanizing hens seems to come up, but I'm not really too concerned about that. If we heed some of the recommendations that Ms. Lewis has made, I think the way these hens would see their demise is actually quite satisfactory, considering if you actually do any research on how we get eggs from farm factories, that I think their life and their end of life would be almost glorious compared to how we get the majority of our local eggs. I do support the growing of local food, and I think this is on the path for us being a self-sustainable community. I think that with the regulations on cage and pen sizes, the fees for licensing, I think the 4 hens maximum. I'm not in agreement with Victoria in having no limit on the number of hens. I think 4 hens is acceptable per household. I think that with that we would have an acceptable program for people to raise backyard hens. I think especially with the fees and the requirements, that it wouldn't be that half of Prince Rupert would be raising hens and hens would be clucking down the street. I really can't see anyone doing that because the requirements are pretty rigid if we actually heed some of the advice given to us. It's a dedicated few that would do that, and that dedicated few are out there. So saying that there are a dedicated few, I don't want you to push aside all the priorities on the side of your desk to put this at the top, but I do think that we should go forward in this recommendation.
Certainly. That's correct. There is no motion until it's seconded.
So my question is, because I'm willing to second the motion if I a time, or can we just allow that staff knows that it's kind of at the bottom? That's what my question is.
Yeah, Your Worship, we won't be taking a whole bunch of action on this until we've got those other priorities done, and that's really the way we respond to most additional requests.
So your motion, Councillor Rice, again?
My motion is the recommendation that's in the report, and if you'd like me to read it, I can do that.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
As long as the whole council understands, it is there in writing. So it's been moved by Councillor Rice, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Councillor Garon.
It might be a friendly amendment, but maybe Mr. Howie covered it off. Could we defer that until after we review our strategic plan next year? Just hold. Just keep it on hold.
You could, Your Worship. There might be an opportunity, though, in the meantime, just for Mr. Krekic to speak to the bylaw folks and just do some of that preliminary work when he's not working on a couple other projects. So I think if there's an understanding that, it doesn't get on this list until something else drops off, that the motion's appropriate.
So it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Krekic, the people that I've talked to have concerns that certainly it's permitted, the permitted use is permitted, that things are built properly, that nobody decides how many chickens they want to have, that it is regulated either per house or per lot. And because of the varying setbacks in the city of Prince Rupert with regard to houses, the older houses and newer houses, people have suggested at the very least that if something is located on a piece of residential property, that it'll be at the back of the lot. The concern there is that when houses are sited differently on lots, what somebody figures is far enough from their back door or their back window may be not that far from their neighbors. And if you could find out, please, why Smithers, where they are an agricultural community, did not allow this. It's very interesting that they would not allow it because, of course, they have a lot more domestic animals than this community would ever consider having. Are there any other comments? Councillor Rice.
I could speak to the Smithers issue because I did actually inquire with the Mayor of Smithers about that, and
certainly
it was actually it wasn't that this was actually the hen bylaw was not sort of researched and proposed. It was actually just a discussion brought to the table, and the discussion was just dropped that they didn't actually want to deal with this because it wasn't one of their priorities at that time. It's what was explained to me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There's no further discussion. Question's been called. Those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much for your report, Mr. Krekic. Next is a report from the Corporate Administrator concerning a property at 301 9th Avenue East. And the recommendation is that the dwelling located at 301 9th Avenue West and legally described as Lot 14, Block 39, Section 5, Range 5, Plan 923, District Lot 251, be declared a hazard under Section 73 of the Community Charter, and that the registered owners, Peter Merriweather and Paul Merriweather, be required to remove or demolish the building within 30 days. And further, for the purpose of this resolution, remove or demolish shall mean to either remove or cause to be removed all building components, including but not limited to the roof, the beams, the walls, the floor, the electrical, the plumbing, and mechanical systems to the foundation, and if there are any concrete or wood pilings or piers, that they be removed and the building site be filled to the prevailing grade. Mr. Gradecki, have you got anything to add to that?
Just very briefly, Your Worship, this exact same report appeared on the June 11th, 2012 agenda, and just because the registered ownership was changing hands at the time, we didn't get the correct names on the resolution, and so now we're here just to correct that, and then we can move forward with legal notification.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. There's another report from the Corporate Administrator regarding nuisance and hazardous properties. It comes with a recommendation that Council receive this report for information. Mr. Burdecki, would you outline your report, please?
Yes, Your Worship. During the 2012 Council Strategic Planning Session, staff was asked to bring information forward to Council regarding the policy of how problem properties are dealt with in the City of Prince Rupert. As it turns out, there really isn't one policy that encompasses all of the different circumstances surrounding nuisance or hazardous properties. And really, they either staff or the complaints from the public or even observations from members of council, they come forward to staff and they bring a particular property to the attention of staff. Once that happens at lower levels, either the bylaw officer or the building inspectors work with the owners and to try and get compliance with whatever the problem is. If those issues can't be resolved at that level, they will sometimes refer it up to administration. And when that happens, then reports like the one we just previously dealt with will come to in front of council to seek a recommendation for remedial action. If a remedial action order is adopted by council, legislation requires that the property owners have legal notice and an opportunity to come back before council and seek relief from the remedial action. If council changes the remedial action by allowing more time or changing the scope of work that was adopted earlier, then once again it starts the legal process again, notification again, and it goes like that. So that's really in a nutshell, and I can gladly answer questions if necessary.
Certainly, thank you. I'll ask Council to consider the recommendation. Councillor Ashley.
I move that Council receive this report for information.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Garon. Is there any discussion? Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was the one that asked for this, and thank you for the information. And I understand that, there are special circumstances for all properties. And I guess what it sort of dates back to, there was a property that's, there was complaints for 20 years, and I just don't want that kind of thing to go on for that long. So I guess, like you say, each property is different. So I would just like to be kept abreast at what's going on out there on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. The question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That recommendation is adopted. Next is a report from the Chief Financial Officer. This concerns the April 2012 monthly department report. It comes with a recommendation that Council receives its report for information purposes. Mr. Rodin, would you please outline your report?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the April report. Essentially, we're on track with our revenues and expenditures for this part of year. The quick and dirty way of looking at expenditures is to say January, February, March, April. That's 4 months. There's 12 in a year, so we should have about 66% left, and we're just about bang on. Revenues, as I say, are also good. That concludes my report.
Thank you. I'll ask Council's consideration of the recommendation. Councillor Ashley.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Is there any discussion with regards to the recommendation? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That is adopted. Next is a report from the Chief Financial Officer concerning the permissive property tax exemption policy. It comes with a recommendation that Council consider the proposed permissive property tax exemption policy and provide direction to staff on any needed changes to the policy, and schedule an opportunity for public presentations on the proposed policy at the July 30th, 2012 Council meeting. Mr. Rodin, would you please outline your report on permissive property tax exemption policy?
Certainly, Your Worship. I want to start by saying that I shamelessly plagiarized from Kelowna. So thank you, George, for offering it up. That's the CFO down there. The recommendation of the report is for Council to propose changes tonight and then send it out for public consultation. It's a fairly all-encompassing policy. We're still doing a little bit of work on the actual application form. It may be advantageous to simply send it out to the public and see what their how they feel about this report and the proposed not a bylaw, but the proposed policy. There are a couple of pages of analysis that basically every time council approves a permissive exemption, it means that other people pay more taxes. It's a zero-sum game. If someone's getting a free ride, somebody else is paying more. The city of Prince Rupert is fairly generous in the amount of permissive tax exemptions that it gives. We score quite. There's a graph there that shows that proportionately relative to total tax revenue, we give quite a few. In dollar value, I was thinking about this a few days ago after I'd written the report, and I'd be willing to speculate that communities where there was a large industrial tax base probably do more of that than communities that have primarily a residential tax base. And it also identifies the various types of exemptions that most communities give. As I say, the eligibility criteria, we've basically taken it verbatim from Kelowna. They have a multiple year exemption policy where which allows council to approve up to a 5-year exemption subject to certain conditions, and we could go and do that under this proposed policy, and that would alleviate people having to fill out the same forms every year. Partial exemptions, the utility of service, that one is new. Basically what that means is that it means that the piece of property that's being exempted has to be used to provide direct service to the community. So that would mean that vacant land would not be given a permissive tax exemption because the organization would not be using it to provide a direct service. So for organizations that have purchased land with the anticipation of building, the policy contemplates that by saying we would give them a 1-year exemption, and in the subsequent year they'd have to demonstrate that they were well on the way to construction for them to receive a second year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodin. Considerations from council. Councillor Bedard. Or pardon me. It's going to be a long night. Councillor Thorkelson. Gee, there's a name from the past. Must be the hair color. Must have got me.
Must be. This is a good report. It's easy to read, and I was really happy to see it. The only problem is I wasn't quite sure where it differentiated from the present policy. That's all. I wasn't quite sure where it would be just useful if you say where it was different than what we do already, and that would be helpful. And then the other thing is I did want to know, because I wasn't clear when I read this, and maybe I just didn't see it, but are there more than just churches that have statutory exemption, or what were the statutory exemptions?
Okay, the city did not have a codified policy before. This was a request from council to codify our policy. Essentially, everything that we're doing currently would be covered in this policy. The policy would allow us to put such things as require such things as restrictive covenants on property, and that sort of thing. The one difference is that currently council is in the past has provided a permissive tax exemption to a local service club that owns a vacant piece of land. This policy would, if approved, would prevent that from happening. Presumably council, of course it's a policy and it's not a bylaw, and council can say, yes, that's what's in the policy, but this is what we're going to do anyways. So presumably what council, if council was to approve this policy, they might say, well, effective now, what we're going to do is we will give you a 1-year exemption on that piece of vacant property. But by and large, everything that we're doing currently is covered in this policy. It's simply for people on the outside looking in and wondering how we're doing it and whether or not they could get a permissive exemption. By approving this policy, it would give them the guidelines that we follow. Regarding what receives statutory exemptions, it's the actual building, the house of worship, that gets the exemption, and the footprint of the building, the garden, the driveway, the parking lot. They're all permissive exemptions that council has to grant. Other statutory exemptions, I'm not sure which one. I know there are some, but right now the answer eludes me. I'll get back to you.
Councillor Thorkelson, anything further?
Yeah, I do have. Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out one thing, because I was looking at the chart of how generous we are for those exemptions, and one of the things I saw, this is just by way of not a question, it's by way of just discussion or something to point out in the report, is that we give out $411,000 in permissive tax exemptions, and but out of those, about 300,000 is for what I think most people would consider to be city structures or city buildings, right? So the Leicester Centre of the Arts takes 200,000 of that, museum 60,000 of that, the Racket Association $2,600, and then the Prince Rupert Golf Society is 21,800. And so I just wanted to point out that if we that what the report points out, that you have to be careful about comparison with other communities, because other communities may or may not have those types of services, or may just fully own them, and so if you own your own performing arts building, then you don't have to give yourself a grant or a permissive tax exemption. So really, when we look at church groups, service groups, and social service groups, if we take out the things that we aren't, that most people in Prince Rupert would consider their city-owned buildings, we're really only looking at around $100,000, which is still a lot of money.
1% tax.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. I'm saying it's still a lot of money, but it's not $400,000. That's all I wanted to point out.
Well, if you're looking for a comment, people have commented to me year after year about this, and said that it's fine for the city to support what we refer to as the Big Six, which of course you've named some of them: the golf course, the Performing Arts Centre, the museum, tourism, Prince Rupert. So they believe it's acceptable to support those Big Six. And of course, when you support tourism, Prince Rupert, you're not giving them a tax exemption, but we do support them. But instead of tax exemption for tourism to Prince Rupert, to put the Racket Club in there, and to exempt all the churches, and then let everybody else come forward and substantiate why they believe they should have a permissive property tax exemption. And that's what people have told me. I'm not sure how the council feels about that, but people believe that the city is exceptionally generous, and they're also concerned about their annual taxes. And we've all heard from residents at various times that taxes are too high. And there's that belief that if you drop those other organizations that are on there, if they're going to survive, the community at large will support them. And that's what I've heard from some people. Is there any other comments from members of council? Councillor Rice.
I don't think it's in this report, but do we have a list of the service groups that are getting the?
Yes, it's in the permissive property tax exemption bylaw, and the council can certainly be provided with a copy of that. Councillor Ashley.
I just wanted to make a comment, echoing thanks, as it's detailed, and I think this will be helpful. Obviously, public input will be taken into account, but I think when it comes down to like making the decisions, which I think need to be made by, is it October?
Prior to October, the end of October.
This
yes.
will make it a lot easier for us to decide what things we need to do in terms of this. So thank you to staff, because I think this will make it very a lot easier. It won't make it easy because it's never easy with these things, but it makes it a lot more straightforward.
Would council like to adopt the recommendation, which allows for a public comment? Yes, Councillor Ashley.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Garon. Is there any discussion with regards to the motion? Councillor Rice.
I'm a little bit confused. I just want to know exactly what I'm voting on. I'm voting on that this is our general policy, but it's not codified, and so we're going to codify.
No, what you're voting on, Councillor, is the recommendation on the cover page of the agenda under item 6E, or pardon me, 6F, and it says that council consider the proposed permissive property tax exemption policy and provide direction to staff and any needed changes to the policy, and schedule an opportunity for public presentation on the proposed policy at the July 30th, 2012 council meeting. So this would allow for the setup of that public opportunity for comment. The council could then consider the comments from the public and decide accordingly the policy that they would like to see in place.
Okay.
Councillor Ashley?
I just wanted to just mention this because you were saying it would be good to hear from those that are getting the permissive tax exemptions currently. So I think it would be good if, I don't know if it would be appropriate to contact all of the people that are currently getting tax exemptions, but it would be good if we could at least contact the big ones. But it probably would be beneficial if everybody could be contacted so they can come forward and make comments if needed.
Certainly, although we do hear from the 6 largest on an annual basis.
I agree with you, but I'm just echoing what you were saying earlier, saying that
no, I think when it
perhaps
comes
they come
to this,
forward.
When it comes to this, I think you invite everybody that's listed in that bylaw.
And this would give them time. Mr. Howitt.
That's the plan, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Rice, you have a question?
I think I would just, I mean, it's premature right now, but just for the future, I think I would like to see, I understand the big 6. I'd like to see the breakdown of the approximately $100,000, which falls under church groups and service groups and social service groups. I'd like to see who's getting what. I know that was available elsewhere, but I wouldn't know where to find it. If someone could provide that, that would be great.
We'll email it to council tomorrow, Your Worship. It's also in the annual report.
All right, thank you. Any further comments? Not, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion passes. Next is a report from the Prince Rupert and Port Edward Economic Development Corporation, grant writer researcher. Concerns a council resolution which for West Cap, and it concerns the Cow Bay Community Wharf project proposal. Comes with a recommendation that the mayor and council pass a resolution authorizing the following applications to the Fisheries Legacy Trust for the West Coast Community Adjustment Program, and it's entitled West Cap 203.019 Cow Bay Community Wharf Project. We do have some proponents here in the gallery tonight, and if council would like, they could go through their report and give this matter some more exposure. It is a wharf facility. It does involve the Cow Bay development area. It is for the community, and it is a way of bringing in transient marine vessels that are off of Prince Rupert and could be attracted to the community, could provide eventually a full-service marina. Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, if Council wishes, Derek and John are coming forward. I just wanted to remind Council that this is on the top 5 priority list.
Right.
And we were to report on it in June, and here we are.
Thank you. Would Council like to listen to the proposal? Certainly. Gentlemen, would you please come forward? Please make yourselves comfortable. Thank you for coming down here this evening. And I know you've been sitting there at least 2.5 hours, and appreciate it. Please proceed when you're ready. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us tonight. Really excited to have this chance to talk to you about some of the progress we made over the past year. To give a little bit of background, myself and John, who represents Community Futures here tonight, we started about a year ago to identify a need for itinerant yachts, and it really came from a discussion that was being had throughout the community about we understand that there's a number of itinerant yachts that cruise past Prince Rupert every year due to lack of moorage. So we aim to quantify that, and we did that last year with help from our grant writer researcher, myself, and John Farrell. And what we found was that on a 5-year rolling average, approximately 1,200 itinerant yachts cruise past Prince Rupert every year. And this is a significant opportunity lost for our community, for proponent, and for our local retail establishments that include our boutique retailers, restaurants, and grocery stores, etc. Is there anything I missed there?
And the current capacity for that those 1,200 yachts in Prince Rupert is 10 slips. So
if you'd like to roll out the proposal, so to speak, of what you're trying to pursue with the support of the council and others in the community.
So upon learning that this was, as Mr. Howie mentioned, top 5 on Mayor and Council's strategic plan for this year, we sought out support from our external stakeholders that include the Prince Rupert Port Authority, John here from Community Futures, myself, the Prince Rupert Yacht Club, and a few others that are at this time slipping my mind. But we enlisted the help of Herald Engineering, who's an engineering firm based out of Nanaimo, who is quite experienced in these kind of endeavors. They have proposed that we look at the water lot between Northline Cruise Terminal and the Prince Rupert Yacht Club, as there is some existing infrastructure there that could be added on to that would significantly reduce the cost for this initiative. So what is being proposed is a 2-phased approach. The first phase would be the community wharf aspect, of which we are applying to Fisheries Legacy Trust for. It includes a 12-foot wide concrete community wharf that has capacity for 32 slips for boats ranging from 40 to 50 feet. Fill that at all?
And I guess the benefits for this marina are threefold. One is the economic benefits of capturing those 1,200 recreational vessels that are just waving goodbye to Prince Rupert as they sail on to the Alaska Theater. Secondly, is a lifestyle issue. It's really this community wharf will give the people of Prince Rupert a chance to get into the harbor, have that access. And thirdly, not only is it part of your strategic thinking, but it's also the crown of the port's Cow Bay development plan. It'll be a focus for our visitors. It'll be a focus for residents. And it means that the businesses that are in Cow Bay will see increased revenue, which will also grow past Cow Bay and into the larger business sectors. So 3 big check marks for this project.
And in terms of the economic impact, we've done some really preliminary estimates on what that could be with the 1,200 yachts that we know are passing by. We've based this off of a study that was done by the Nanaimo Port Authority, and we provided some high and low estimates of what that could be, the low being approximately $1.3 million in consumer spending throughout Prince Rupert in the summer months, and the high being 2.5, I believe. And that's all. If you want more background on where those numbers came from exactly, it's all in the report here.
Certainly, thank you. Is there anything further to add? How would this facility be supported through the winter?
So one of the things that we're looking at right now is actually leasing these berths, pre-leasing or pre-selling the leases to the berths to people that are interested in winter moorage. So and the response we're getting both locally and further afield in the yachting community is pretty positive. People are interested in having their pleasure craft up here so that they can spend the times when it's less stormy and where they're getting into good weather so that they can actually just cruise around the Alaska Theatre in Haida Gwaii.
And Your Worship, to answer your question directly, in terms of winter moorage, that's a big focus for us. That adds to the sustainability and keeping rates low in the summer months to make us competitive with other yacht clubs in Ketchikan or other places in Southeast Alaska, Vancouver Island, and the Lower Mainland.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of council? Councillor Thorkelson.
I read this report with great interest, and I think it's an excellent report. I just had a couple of questions. What I was wondering is, there is $288,000. That's what the annual looks like. That's what the annual revenues are going to be. But I couldn't find in here. Maybe it was just that I read it too quickly. But I couldn't find annual operating costs, and so I was wondering what the net gain would be. And then I was wondering how this has to be shared between the partners. Is this going to be is the Cow Bay Wharf going to be wholly owned by the City of Prince Rupert? So 100% of the revenue of the net revenues would be accruing to the City of Prince Rupert, or are we going to be sharing them with other organizations? So I see that the port is going to be putting some money in, so I was wondering if we were going to be revenue sharing with another organization. I guess that was my two biggest questions, because it says $300,000 in potential annual revenue to fund operations. Through this revenue, the municipal administration fulfill one of its major economic development initiatives to increase revenue from sources other than property taxes. And so, I mean, $300,000 is nothing to sneeze at, and it would be nice to do that. And it shows that the total annual revenue is $288,000. And again, it seems to accrue to the project, but it doesn't say what it is. And it looks like the city is being asked to put in money from both our gas tax, so around $500,000, or just over that. $311,000 is our part of the grant, and then $250,000, so that's just over $500,000. If we in fact get $300,000 or $288,000, it'll just take 3 years to get our money back, which is pretty darn good. But that's why I was interested in two things: who's going to own this wharf when it's finished, because the liabilities are also the owners, and what is the net revenue? What do you think the net revenues are going to be after maintenance costs, etc.?
So those are all great questions, and those are things that we've been contemplating ourselves, and they do require more research. And essentially, where we're at is looking at getting some of the core funding in place and then examining that to a further degree. As you mentioned, there are a number of partners that are involved in this, particularly the Port Authority and the city, the Port Authority with their water lot. So there would need to be a partnership agreement in place. How that looks at this time, we don't know, but we are open to suggestions. In terms of constructing it with concrete, although it was a little bit more cost than traditional wood docks, it did significantly reduce the amount of maintenance that had to be done. Unfortunately, I don't have the estimated operating costs in front of me, but we are conscious that it might be in the best interest to look at contracting operation of the community wharf out to an existing entity that has experience in managing such things. The Prince Rupert Yacht Club comes to mind, and there would have to be some type of profit sharing agreement in place with that.
And just to add to that, Joy, so we've been discussing this with the port and the city, and I guess going forward, one thing that is clear is that there's support for a partnership between the municipality and the port. It supports water lot. They would be in charge of security, and in similar cases that the port has developed along the waterfront, they've actually contracted out the actual operational maintenance to the yacht club. So that's one of the models that we're favoring right now. And so we've started those discussions, and those discussions will continue until we've got something in place. But it will require us to have a partnership agreement in writing.
Councillor Thorkelson?
Yeah, and I have some concerns over that, and it's not because I always feel like I'm the biggest critic of the port, but I'm not. But we put in the cruise ship dock. We put $3 million, and the city really, other than the sale of that property that we happen to purchase and then resell, we have not received a whole lot of value for our $3 million for the corporate entity of the city, and that's all I'm concerned of. I'm well aware of how much work docks take to maintain, right? And and that would be my concern, is that we're making enough money that the city is not being required to put money into this, and that in fact we will be getting money out of this. That's all. I mean, you just look at all of the work that's been gone down in Rushbrook, or the work that had to go out to Port Ed to renew all of those floats, right? The work that was done out at Fairview, that it was a fair amount of work, and even then those floats aren't in the best of shape. So that's what my concern is just the ongoing, part of my concern is the ongoing maintenance, that we don't get stuck with doing that.
Any other questions? Councillor Garon and Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's an excellent report you've presented in front of us, and I'm really quite excited about it. I've been bugging council for the last 10 years or 15 years about this, because I did deal with a lot of yachts people, and it's for years, like you say, they've been sailing by, so I really support this application.
Councillor Rice.
Ditto to that. I spend a lot of time on the water, and I understand that we are missing opportunities with yachts sailing by. So from a big picture perspective, I think it's a great proposal, and in theory I'm in support of the proposal. But I was confused actually about who owns what and who gets what, and that I would really want to be clarified, because essentially you're asking the city to contribute over $300,000, whereas the port's contributing $75,000 for something to go on port property. So I'm a little bit reticent in just the imbalance of the dollar figures for something that is actually for the port, even though I do see all the benefits that we would get as a community. But so I'm like just reading under the legal and regulatory requirements section of the proposal. It just sounds like we're doing an application for the port.
Mr. Farrell.
I think, though, Councillor Rice, that the fact that the port is putting in that big piece of water lot is substantial, as you know, there's always an opportunity cost for any choice you make, and if the port is interested in turning that into a community wharf with us as partners, I think that's a significant step forward, because really the port could be using that water lot for a lot of other maybe more lucrative endeavors, and they're interested in joining this because it has a huge community benefit.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
Thank you. I also echo the sentiments. This sounds great. Great proposal, lots of things. I do have a couple of questions. And a comment first in that while I hear what other people are saying in terms of concerns about who owns what and all those other things, I guess what I look at is that I'm pretty sure that we're not going to be, even though we may agree that we're going to, be in favor of this, no money is going to be changing hands until agreements are in place between all the various partners that have been agreed upon by all the various partners. So I'm not so much worried about those things, because those things I think will get sorted out as we go along. One comment I wanted to make, just as you guys are going forward, and I don't know what kinds of different scenarios there are for partnership agreements, but it would be interesting to see if there could be some sort of I don't know what the right word would be, but like a payback model where people kind of get their investment back and then kind of revenue starts getting shared after investment comes back. So something I was thinking of. My question through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff would be, in terms of this money, and I know it's like down the road, where would we be looking at getting that $300,000 from in terms of our budget?
Mr. Howie?
First of all, I don't think we would be looking at any expenditure for probably 2 years. 1 year for sure. And we'd have to take a look at other capital requirements. We'd have to take a look at that time at what reserves and surpluses we may have. I think there might also be opportunities for contributions towards that 300 from other people in the community. This project does seem to have general support, and so I think that there might be an opportunity for the city to reduce the impact directly on our budget by frankly going out and asking other folks if they'd like to be either part of it or to make a donation. It ties in a bit with some of the initiatives that have been taking place recently or may take place in the future around providing better access to the waterfront because of other developments such as Ridley Island. So I think there might be an opportunity there as well. And I think that's part of the reason actually why the port is not only putting the water lot in, but is also looking at some cash contribution.
Councillor Ashley.
I wanted to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That recommendation is adopted. Just before the both of you leave, I want to thank you both, Mr. Baker, for your work on behalf of the Economic Development Corporation and the city, and Mr. Farrell, your work on behalf of the Community Futures here in Prince Rupert with regards to your partnership with the Prince Rupert Port Authority, and that is the work that is being done to garner cruise ship activity again within this community. Without the three entities working together, it would not be possible. And I believe that needs to be echoed, and I believe that the three organizations need to continue to work together to build up opportunity in the community on the marine-related side, whether it's pocket cruise ships, whether it's other developments, whether it's the larger cruise ships, whether it's this marina proposal. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is correspondence for action, and it's a proclamation request from Mr. Ian Cullen, the owner of Far West Sport and Cycle, and it comes with a recommendation that Council declare the month of June Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Councillor Kinney. Thank you. Is there a seconder? seconded by Councillor Garon. Is there any discussion? Question has been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That proclamation has passed and will be issued. We'll move on to reports. City Manager, Outstanding Council Initiatives. Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, I just wanted to, on my council update report, just remind people that property owners' tax payments must be received by the July 3rd by the city. That's the due date, and if we don't receive those tax payments by the 3rd, then there's a 10% penalty that's levied. Just also to remind people that mailing their tax payments, they need to allow for enough time for the check to be received by the city on the due date. We can't accept a postmark. We have to have the funds in our possession on the due date, which again is 3rd of July. People paying at their bank or making electronic payments should allow 4 to 5 days from the time they initiate that transaction electronically or at the bank to make sure it does get to the city by the 3rd of July. We do put that same notice on our tax notice, but I just thought I'd take this opportunity to remind people. Also related to taxes, we now have software in place on our website so that people can apply for their homeowner's grant online. And it's very important that those people who are eligible for a homeowner's grant have that application again in our hands along with the tax payment. Turning to the council's priority chart, what I intend to do with this is we are starting to tick some of these things off, so I intend to provide council over the next month with the complete list again, and then maybe we can have an opportunity to see what initiatives council may want to move up the list. We did have a meeting, the mayor and myself, with Minister Lekstrom on June 20th to discuss the airport and the airport access project. There will be a notice going out on RFP for the transition house. Council made that decision a couple meetings ago that we advertised for expressions of interest in the use of the old transition house on Atlan Avenue. There will be there's already an advertisement, I believe, in the paper regarding train whistles. So if it's not there, it will be soon. And we dealt with the derelict property policy on this agenda. Waterfront plan, Mr. Krekic has organized a bunch of public input meetings, and first of those is going to be on June 27th at 7 p.m., from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Leicester Centre of the Arts, in the lobby, not in the main theatre, but in the lobby. And again on the 28th of June here at City Hall between 11:30 and 1:30 p.m. and 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the council chambers, and that's to do a presentation in an open house forum on what City Council is looking at, and basically that's the property or the water and properties from the lightering dock around to Galway Rapids Bridge on the east side of town. And so people are welcome to come to those meetings, see what information we have, and make suggestions on what they think might be some land use priorities. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Wantage Road Gate, I wonder if we put any advertising out about having some public input into that.
No, we haven't yet, but we will be very shortly. We've been working on some of these other things.
There's been lots of comments back and forth on that. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Ashley?
Just one thing just to start with, and I'm not sure if we want to do it today because it's at a cow or if we wanted to do it at the next meeting. But and I can't remember her name, the lady that came forward about Dana McKay's swim.
Yes.
And I would like to move that we write a letter of recognition, I guess, of her work along those lines from council.
Certainly. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Is there any discussion on that?
Question.
Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is passed. Councillor Rice, you had a question?
I just wanted to actually flag something that we discussed at the last regular council meeting, which was we did write the letter to the federal government in regards to Bill C-38, which was the federal budget implementation bill, and it did pass with none of the requests of breaking up the legislation or breaking up the sections of non-fiscal items into separate pieces of legislation to be debated. So an unfortunate result of that is that Planet Youth friendship houses across the country have been cut back, and so as of the 29th of June, the Planet Youth program has been cut in Prince Rupert. They just recently created a youth council, and the section of Planet Youth is the 19 to 24-year-old part that's been cut back. And if you recall, Inspector Kilberry talking about youth being the top priority for the RCMP, and that the RCMP actually participated in and would participate in the Gathering Strength canoe journey. So with that, the 19 to 24-year-olds are technically not participating in the Gathering Strength canoe journey. And so I wanted to just do a shout out that if people wanted to make a contribution or some sort of assistance to allow that to happen, that they contact the Friendship House in Prince Rupert so that our youth could participate in that canoe journey. And it's unfortunate that we've lost that program in Prince Rupert.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I just wanted, because we had another presentation, not sure if we want to deal with it tonight or not, but regarding the Sugar Shack and the situation. I was going to throw out the idea that how people are feeling, because it is late, that if we wanted to defer it to our next meeting to discuss, but maybe we could make arrangements that if there are interest charges or something on the bill at the Civic Center, we could kind of have those kind of put on hold until we make a decision. But I'm not sure if people want to talk about it now or if we want to wait.
We should wait for a report from staff on that, and certainly any interest charges can be held in abeyance. Okay. It's not that long a period of time. Any other questions or inquiries? No? If not, I'll give the mayor's report. First of all, I'd like to thank Ridley Terminals Incorporated for sponsoring a free community day at the Civic Center, and that was on Saturday, June 16th, 2012, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And children from Prince Rupert and Port Edward were able to take part in free activities that included swimming, floor hockey, bounce-a-lots, an open auditorium and gymnasium, and hot dogs and beverages and face painting. And Ridley Terminals is very generous to the community, and they do this as well as other events in the community. One of the other ones is a free day right at Christmas when the children are out of school. It's very much appreciated. For a mayor's report, I attended the Tourism Prince Rupert annual general meeting and their election of 2 individuals to their board of directors. I attended a presentation concerning a proposed liquefied natural gas export terminal, and Councillors Carlick, Pearson, Garon, and Rice were also in attendance. I attended the Prince Rupert Port Authority annual public meeting and the opening of the Ports Interpretation Centre. Also in attendance were Councillors Ashley, Garon, and Rice. I participated in a presentation by the Prince Rupert Port Authority of $100,000 to Prince Rupert Minor Soccer Association. This donation is to be included with monies from the City of Prince Rupert and School District 52, and will go towards the purchase and an installation of the new AstroTurf at the sports field adjacent the Charles Hayes School. I attended the Pacific Coast School 2012 graduation ceremony, On behalf of City Council and the residents of Prince Rupert, provided our best wishes to the 11 graduates. I met with the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure of the province of British Columbia to discuss and review pending port facility developments and the planned improving of access to the Prince Rupert Airport on Digby Island in conjunction with support from both the provincial and federal governments. I attended the National Aboriginal Day 2012 celebration held at the Rotary Waterfront Park and provided best wishes on behalf of City Council and the people of Prince Rupert. And I also attended the Charles Hayes Secondary School graduation ceremonies and brought congratulations and best wishes to the graduates. That concludes the report. Yes, please go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you for your report. I actually, just before we went, I wanted to just give a shout out to Councillor Carlick Pearson, who is recovering from knee surgery and would have liked to have attended tonight's meeting, but we wish her well.
Thank you. I'll ask Council to adjourn this meeting and we'll reconvene to an in-camera with a 10-minute recess. Somebody would like to make that motion? Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. This regular meeting of Council stands adjourned.